I never considered myself the type to have neighbor drama. I'm an architect who works from home, keeps to himself, and follows the rules. But everything changed when Deborah Winters became president of our Oak Ridge Estates HOA. Most people call her Deborah to her face, but everyone calls her Karen behind her back. It's not her real name, but it might as well be. She embodies every stereotype of the entitled rule-obsessed neighbor that makes suburban living a nightmare. When I bought my craftsman-style home 3 years ago, the previous HOA president was a retired judge who ran meetings efficiently and fairly. He moved to Florida last year, and that's when Deborah saw her opportunity. She campaigned aggressively, promising to restore property values and enforce standards. What that really meant was launching a reign of terror over our once peaceful neighborhood. It started with daily violation notices for the most minor infractions. Mrs. Chin down the street got fined because her garbage can was visible from the sidewalk for an extra hour after collection. The Johnsons received a warning because their holiday lights stayed up 3 days past the January 5th deadline. But I managed to stay off her radar for months, meticulously following every absurd rule in our 32-page covenant. That changed when spring arrived. I have, or had, a beautiful maple tree in my backyard. It was there when I bought the house, perfectly positioned to provide shade for my home office during summer afternoons. According to my property survey, it was clearly within my property line, about 4 feet from the fence I share with Deborah. One Saturday morning, I was sketching designs at my desk when I heard an unfamiliar mechanical sound from my backyard. I walked to the window and couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was Deborah, standing in my yard, directing 2 men with chainsaws who were cutting limbs from my maple tree. I nearly dropped my coffee mug as I rushed outside. "What do you think you're doing to my tree?" Deborah turned, not even remotely surprised to see me. She was wearing designer sunglasses despite the overcast day, her highlighted bob perfectly styled, clipboard in hand. She looked like she was conducting an orchestra rather than orchestrating tree vandalism. "Oh, good morning." The branches are extending over the property line and dropping sap on my new patio furniture. The HOA bylaws clearly state in Section 12, Paragraph 4, that no foliage shall encroach on neighboring properties. That may be true, but you can't just enter my property and start cutting without permission. That's trespassing. "Actually," she said with that condescending smile I'd come to know from HOA meetings, "as HOA president, I have authority to address violations directly. I sent you a notice last week." She hadn't sent anything, and we both knew it. I took a deep breath. I'm not confrontational by nature, but this was crossing a line, literally and figuratively. The men with chainsaws looked uncomfortable, clearly caught in the middle of our dispute. "Please ask your contractors to stop cutting immediately. If branches need trimming, I'll hire someone myself. You're on my property without permission." "Well, since we're already here." She gestured for the men to continue. I pulled out my phone. "If they cut one more branch, I'm calling 911 to report trespassing and destruction of property." That got their attention. The workers shut off their chainsaws, looking to Deborah for direction. Her face flushed red, not from embarrassment, but from rage at being challenged. "Fine," she snapped. "I'll have my attorney send you a formal notice. And expect a violation letter for this unkempt tree. You have 3 days to address it properly." They left, but not before taking several major limbs from my beautiful maple. I documented everything with photos, including the property line markers visible in several shots. I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, that afternoon, a formal HOA violation notice appeared in my mailbox citing Section 12, Paragraph 4 of the bylaws about encroaching vegetation, and Section 8, Paragraph 2 about aesthetic maintenance standards. The notice demanded I remove the diseased and unsightly tree within 7 days or face daily fines of $100. The tree wasn't diseased at all. It was healthy and thriving. But more importantly, it was my tree on my property. I decided it was time to fight back, but smartly. First, I contacted an arborist to assess the tree's health. As expected, he provided documentation that the maple was perfectly healthy, though now somewhat unbalanced due to the unauthorized trimming. Next, I reviewed our HOA bylaws carefully. While there were rules about vegetation crossing property lines, there was nothing prohibiting a healthy tree within one's own yard. Most importantly, I discovered that any HOA board member with a personal interest in a dispute must recuse themselves from enforcement actions. I drafted a formal response to the HOA board, copying all members except Deborah, outlining the situation, including the trespassing incident, the arborist report, and the relevant bylaw sections. I was professional but firm, making it clear I wouldn't be bullied. The response was surprising. Several board members reached out privately, apologizing for the situation. Apparently, Deborah had been acting unilaterally in many cases, and they were growing concerned about her leadership style. They assured me no action would be taken regarding my tree. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I had to visit a client's construction site. I left early in the morning and returned around 2 p.m. As I turned onto our street, I noticed an unusual amount of activity near my house. There was a truck from Karen's cut-rate tree service parked in front of my home, and to my horror, I saw men with chainsaws again. But this time, they weren't just trimming branches. They were cutting down my entire maple tree. I slammed on my brakes and jumped out of my car. Deborah was standing there in her designer workout clothes, supervising the operation with a satisfied smirk. She'd parked her red convertible BMW, her pride and joy, directly across the street, presumably to watch the spectacle. "Stop! Stop right now!" I shouted, running toward the workers. The men paused, chainsaws still running. Deborah stepped forward with a document in hand. "I have authorization from the HOA to remove this hazardous tree," she said smugly. "It's a safety issue now, and safety concerns don't require homeowner permission for immediate action." I grabbed the paper from her hand. It was on HOA letterhead but with only her signature, not the required 3 board member signatures for emergency actions. Moreover, the safety hazard claim was completely fabricated. "This is forged and you know it. Tell them to stop immediately, or I'm calling the police." "They're almost done anyway," she shrugged. The tree was compromised from the earlier trimming and could fall at any time. Of course, it was only compromised because she had ordered the improper trimming in the first place. The workers looked uncertain, glancing between us. "Guys, this woman does not have legal authority to remove my tree. If you continue, you'll be liable for damages, along with her. I have documentation proving this tree is healthy and on my property." One of the workers shut off his chainsaw. "Ma'am, you told us you had the homeowner's permission and proper authorization." Deborah's face contorted with anger. "I am the authorization. I'm the HOA president." At that moment, my phone rang. It was Michael, one of the other HOA board members. "Hey, I just got a concerning call from Lisa across the street from you. Is someone cutting down your tree?" "Yes." Deborah brought a crew, and they've already cut through most of the trunk. She forged an HOA authorization. "What? We never approved that." "Hold on. I'm calling the other board members and heading over." When I hung up, I noticed the tree service workers packing up their equipment. Apparently, my mention of forgery and liability was enough to make them reconsider. But it was too late for my maple. They'd already cut through about 80% of the trunk. "You're making a big mistake," Deborah hissed at me. "This neighborhood has standards to maintain." "No, you made the mistake. Trespassing, forgery, destruction of property." "Should I continue?" Just then, there was an ominous creaking sound. The partially cut maple was starting to lean. The workers backed away quickly, and I stepped back as well. Deborah was too focused on berating me to notice. "You'll be hearing from my attorney about your obstruction of HOA business." Her sentence was cut short by a tremendous crack. The massive trunk split where they'd been cutting, and the entire tree began to fall. Not toward my house or the workers or even me. No, as if guided by some cosmic sense of justice, my beautiful maple tree fell directly across the street, right onto Deborah's shiny red BMW convertible. The roof was crushed instantly, the windshield shattered, and the car's frame buckled under the weight of the substantial trunk. There was a moment of complete silence as we all stared at the scene. Then Deborah let out a scream that probably violated our neighborhood noise ordinances. "My car! My car! Look what you've done!" "What I've done? You trespassed on my property, forged documents, and illegally cut down my tree. This is entirely your doing." Her face went through a fascinating transformation. Shock, rage, realization, and then panic, as